What's going on, everybody? UFC 303, Pereira versus Prochazka 2 just finished up, and we're going to go over everything that went down, how we ended up doing on picks, and just recap the entire event. Now, we had an event that was kind of boring, to say the least. There was plenty of boring fights, but there was a few pretty cool finishes, including that main event finish, and we ended up going 10-2 on picks. And yes, there was 13 fights, but one of the fights that we did get right I did not include, and I will explain when we get to that specific fight. But for right now, let's get into the recap of the fights. Make sure you guys hit that like button, subscribe if you're new, and drop your thoughts below in the comment section. Let's get into recapping this card. To start off the night, it was Ricky Simón versus Vinicius Lockdog Oliveira, and the underdog ended up starting off the night with a win. We had Ricky Simón, and I really thought against a guy like Oliveira that struggled against Bernardo Sapaya his last time out in that wrestling department, especially going up against somebody like Ricky Simón that has that high pressure chain wrestling style. I thought Ricky Simón would be able to get it done. But I don't know if it was just me, but Ricky Simón really wasn't fighting like his usual self. I don't know what was going on, but he really didn't seem interested in the fight. He didn't really seem like he was there to scrap. Yeah, he landed a few good shots on the feet, but beyond that, he landed two takedowns that he didn't really garner much control time with, and he just seemed really off. I don't know. Nothing. I'm not taking anything away from Vinicius. He had a great win against a once highly touted prospect in this division in Ricky Simón. Vinicius came in he seemed like he wanted to fight. He pushed the pace. He had the volume. He landed some great shots on the feet against Ricky and clearly won this fight. The only significant moment that Ricky had was in that second round when he checked one of Oliveira's leg kicks, and then Oliveira started like backing up and kind of limping on that leg. I don't know why Ricky Simón stopped kicking his legs after that. He didn't really go in for the kill. It was just really weird to see. We ended up starting off the night with an incorrect pick, so I was not looking forward to the rest of the fights. I was hoping it would turn around, and it did. But we started off with an incorrect pick. Good job for Vinicius Oliveira. He has that exciting style that we all love. So I'm pumped to see him in his next fight. Good for him for toughing out that crazy leg check from Simón as well. Let's move on to the next fight. Next up, we had the newcomer, the road to UFC winner, Tsuruya, going up against Carlos Hernandez. And in this fight, I thought his grappling skills going up against somebody like Hernandez that typically struggles in that department, I thought Tsuruya's grappling would lead him to eventually get a submission victory. But he didn't end up doing that. Carlos had some great scrambles in the grappling department in this fight. He defended himself well in those submission attempts. And Tsuruya, like we mentioned in our breakdown, he has that creative grappling style, and he had Hernandez in some weird positions during this fight, but he ended up winning a 29-28 decision, I believe, and he ended up winning round 1 and round 2. But Hernandez did look a little bit better in that third round. Tsuruya wasn't able to really mount any sort of offense against him, but it was a clear win. He did take the first 2 rounds in a mainly grappling affair, which we did expect. And even though he was a super high favorite in this fight, I didn't have that much confidence in him. We did have him to win, but regardless, I'm excited to see him again. He has that unique creative grappling that's kind of interesting to watch, but it's gonna be good to see how he does against somebody with elite takedown defense and that can strike better than him on the feet. So we will see what's next for him in the UFC, but good win for Tsuruya, the newcomer. Let's move on to the next fight. It was Andre Arlovski against Martin Buday, and this was one of the most boring fights I've ever watched in my life. They must have clinched for 14 and a half out of the 15 minutes of the fight. It was a sloppy, awful fight to watch. Martin Buday ended up winning a split decision. Honestly, they should have just given it to the vet Arlovski, because there's nothing to say about this fight. It was absolutely atrocious. I can't believe these guys got paid to hug each other for 15 minutes up against the cage. But yeah, that's basically how the entire fight went. Buday ended up with the split decision win. You could have given it to Arlovski. You probably should have, because he's the vet and nothing really happened other than them hugging. So not much to say about this fight. Let's move on. We had Buday in that fight, so I guess we got another one right. And this next one was the only other fight that we got wrong on the entire card. We had Michelle Waterson against Jillian Robertson, and it really came down to the confidence I had in Waterson's takedown defense and how much better she was on the feet. But the ability she had in the striking really did not matter because this fight did not take place very long on the feet. Jillian Robertson was able to take her down with relative ease in all 3 rounds, and even though Robertson wasn't able to find a finish on the ground throughout this fight, she absolutely dominated Michelle in this fight. And honestly, it was a sad way for her to go because she ended up retiring after this. And at 38 years old, as a female strawweight, I mean, well past her prime, she had a lengthy career, UFC vet. She was one of the pioneers, as Joe Rogan said in the post-fight interview for women's MMA. So I'm happy to see her kind of like focus on other stuff in her life, but it was not a good fight. I think she made the right decision by retiring. Maybe I should give Jillian Robertson a little bit more credit. I didn't trust her, not that she struck. She wasn't really on the feet very much, but her takedown looked great in this fight. It seems like she's evolving. She's still kind of young. I guess she's like 28, 29 years old. So she has a few more years left in her prime, you can say. And it seemed like she kind of polished up her takedown. So we'll see what's next for her. Good win for the Canadian. We ended up getting this one wrong. I thought Waterson would be able to fight off those takedowns and have the more impactful moments on the feet. But we really didn't get much striking out of this fight. So out of the first 4 fights, we went 2-2, but then we finished off the card perfectly. From here on out, we got every single pick right, and there was a few questionable decisions that we are going to go over. But great win for Jillian. Michelle Waterson, I wish you the best in your retirement. Let's move on. Peyton Talbott, the biggest favorite on the card by far. It closed at like minus 1,400, I believe, going up against Ghemmouri. This fight lasted 19 seconds. Peyton Talbott lands a beautiful straight right on the chin of Ghemmouri, and it just put him down. Talbott tried to go for the walk-off KO. Probably should have, but then the ref should have just stepped in, but gave Ghemmouri a little bit to recover. But as soon as Ghemmouri landed on the ground after that punch, he kind of like shelled up immediately, and Talbott just went in for the kill, finished it off. Talbott looks fantastic, dude. He's 25 years old. He's looking good. He's just a great prospect that I'm really excited for. Yes, Ghemmouri was put in front of him to kind of accentuate his skills and get more hype behind him, but he did exactly what he needed to do. But to be honest, he probably did it quicker and in more emphatic fashion than people were expecting. Yes, he was a minus 1,400 favorite, but was anybody expecting him to finish his opponent in under 20 seconds? I do not think so. Maybe there was a few out there that had that much belief in him, but at 25 years old, he's now 9-0, and with the performances he's been putting on in the UFC, the sky is the limit for this guy. I'm super excited for Peyton Talbott's future in the UFC. Super young, super talented. Let's get him in there early, like in another fight quickly. He didn't take much damage. 19 seconds. I don't even think he absorbed a strike. But like I said, I'm excited to see what the future has in store for Talbott. Let's move on. Next up, we had Charles Jourdain going up against Gene Silva. And I do want to say we did have Gene Silva as the underdog here, but I am super disappointed in the fact that he missed weight. Regardless of what happened for him to miss weight, he said something in the post-fight interview that was really funny. He apparently was a pound away or something like that, and then he went off on his own to do something, and he fell down a flight of stairs or something, the translator was saying. So I don't know what was going on with Gene Silva. Regardless, please make weight next time. Super unprofessional. I hate backing people that miss the weight, but we did have him to win. He was an underdog, and he knocks out Charles Jourdain in that second round. Jourdain had no answer for him on the feet. He ended up turning into a wrestler, and yes, Jourdain does have that grappling ability, but typically he wants to strike, he wants to box with his opponents, but he couldn't find any success in that department against Gene Silva. He tried to clinch up, he tried to get some takedowns, but nothing was really going Jourdain's way tonight. I'm a huge Charles Jourdain fan. He represents Canada for us fellow Canadians, but I did have Gene Silva in this fight. I thought he was just going to be the better striker. He was going to land the more impactful shots on the feet, and that ended up being the case. He ended up getting a second round TKO victory over Charles Jourdain. So for a lot of people, were saying like he didn't have as much experience because obviously he has less pro fights and he hasn't fought the level of competition as Jourdain, but he looked great against somebody in Charles. I'm excited to see what's next for Gene Silva. Hopefully he can make weight moving forward, because I was disappointed in that, but regardless, great win for him. Let's keep rolling through the card. Next up, we had Cub Swanson going up against Andre Fili. Now, we picked Fili to win. He ended up getting a split decision, and it may or may not have been a gift, because that first round, you give it to Fili. I think he had more volume. He was landing the better shots from what I remember. And he was, throughout the fight, the one engaging in those clinches. So he was doing a little bit more. That second round, I think, was clear for Swanson. What it came down to for me was that third round, and although both of them were exchanging strikes, Fili was clinching, but Swanson was what seemed to be landing the more impactful shots in this match. I was not confident in Fili getting his hand raised after the 15 minutes. Honestly, I thought Cub Swanson made a good case for himself, especially in that third round, going in there when it was 1-1. Argument can be made for Swanson. He probably should have won. I think they should have given it to Swanson. I'm not going to complain because Andre Fili was our pick, and we had like an 8-leg parlay that ended up cashing for us. And yes, I will post it on my Twitter eventually. So if you guys don't believe me, you will see it there. But regardless, it was fantastic. I'm super happy that the decisions went our way and how the rest of the card ended up playing out for us after the Michelle Waterson fight. But like I said, I don't know if it's like the MMA gods kind of correcting the situation, because Cub Swanson got gifted a decision win over Hakeem Dawodu in his last time out, and now he kind of like got quote-unquote screwed in this fight. Like I said, Andre Fili won the first, Swanson got the second, and it came down to how you scored that third round. They were both exchanging, yes, but it seemed to me that Swanson was landing the more impactful strikes, but Fili was engaging in other forms of fighting, like the clinching, doing some good clinch work, and he was also landing as well. But honestly, I think Fili got lucky with the win here. Let's move on. My boy Joe Body Bags Pyfer finishes Marc-Andre Barriault in that first round. It was like under 2 minutes, I believe, and there was a lot of people saying that he cannot be trusted, that he's a fraud after losing to Hermanson over 25 minutes in his first main event in the UFC, in his first 5-round fight. There was a lot of them. A lot of people were saying that they were ready to jump ship on Joe Pyfer. I was not ready to do that. I said in my breakdown video that he is the better fighter everywhere, and even though we didn't really get to see any other fighting other than striking, this guy hits like a truck. Marc-Andre Barriault, I don't think, has been knocked out like that in his career. He put him down and landed a crazy uppercut while Marc-Andre was on a knee and just flat cold knocked him out. Joe Pyfer looked great. He was saying in his interviews that he wasn't really actually having many interviews because he understands that he can't be talking his shit after losing to Jack Hermanson like that. So he was kind of keeping it calm, keeping it collected, not really talking about much. And he said he wants to show the corrections he's made. He wants to show his true ability come Saturday night. And what did he do? He knocks out Marc-Andre Barriault in the first round in emphatic fashion, and then he gets on that mic, cuts a beautiful promo. He talks his shit, and I love Joe Bodybags Pyfer. I'm excited to see what's next for him. I'm always excited for a good Joe Pyfer fight. Great win for him. Fantastic. I'm super happy for Pyfer for getting that KO win. Beautiful, beautiful. Let's keep going. This is the main card opener of Ian Garry against Michael Venom Page, and I'm going to be honest with you guys, here's another one that we kind of got away with here. Ian Garry ends up winning a 29-28 decision over Michael Venom Page, and arguments can be made. They can be made, and in our breakdown, you guys will remember that I said for some reason I think that Ian Garry is going to want to wrestle, exchanging the grappling. And what did he do? It's exactly what he did. In that first round, he gets the back of Michael Venom Page. He threatens those rear naked chokes, fantastic job by Michael Venom Page for not giving in to that rear naked choke. It looked pretty deep from what I saw. I don't know if Ian Garry is just like super soft and has no strength, but seemed like it was sunk in. But Michael Venom Page stayed calm. He did everything right defensively in the grappling, and he ended up escaping that first round without getting finished by rear naked choke. That second round, Ian Garry wasn't really able to mount any sort of offense whatsoever. Michael Venom Page was the quicker, better striker, as we thought. I thought that was going to be the case. There's not a lot of people on the planet that are probably faster than Michael Venom Page on the feet, even though he's 37. The guy's fast as shit. Fast as shit. Ian Garry, when he was saying that, oh, I'm the faster striker, I don't think he believed it. I think he's just talking his shit. He's just trying to amp himself up. I don't think he believed he was faster. I don't think anybody does. Michael Venom Page still has that really exciting style that a lot of fans enjoy watching, and he's not going anywhere. This fight probably could have went his way. I personally believe anybody that wasn't named Ian Garry, if they fought that performance against Venom Page, I think Page wins it. That third round is what it came down to, in my opinion. I'm pretty sure that's how it rolled as well. And even though Ian Garry had the back of Venom Page for like maybe a minute and a half, almost 2 minutes, I guess, in that third round to end the fight, he was threatening the rear naked choke. But other than that, he really didn't do anything, man. I don't know. Like, I think we got away with this one. I'm happy about it because we ended up getting another pick correct. Should Ian Garry have won? Probably not. But let's move on. I'm not really excited to see Ian Garry in his next fight. Honestly, if those are the fights that he's going to produce after saying he's like the next up, he wants that belt, all this stuff, brother, you need to have a more exciting fights. You can't be squeaking past a 37-year-old Michael Venom Page if you're talking all this shit about being the next it thing, being the next one to fight the belt or for the belt, all this stuff where you're coming for it, all that, like blah 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 blah. You need to be fighting better than that, buddy. Honestly, I think we got a gift on this one, I think. But let's keep going. Bueno Silva going up against Macy Chiasson. This fight ends in the second round. I'm pretty sure it was the second round. Yes, second round. With Bueno Silva's forehead busted open. I could have put my entire finger in that cut. It was huge. And it was from a slicing elbow on the ground by Macy Chiasson. Now, the first round went entirely differently than I thought. I thought Macy was going to be the better striker. I thought she was going to be the more physical girl and use that range and kind of pick her shots and just out-technique her on the feet. But Bueno Silva came in with that volume. She looked great on the feet. She looked like she was landing the more impactful shots. She looked like she could dictate where the fight took place. She looked like the more physical, stronger girl. And I'm not going to lie. That first round, it looked like she was going to run away with it in the second and third as well. But Macy Chiasson ended up on top in that second round, and even though she said in her post-fight interview that they weren't planning on staying in her guard very long because of that submission threat, the grappling ability of Bueno Silva being so dangerous, but it's kind of good that she did because she landed a brutal slicing elbow to the forehead of Bueno Silva, cut her open. She was bleeding so much that I'm telling you, I could have stuck my finger in that cut. Crazy. Anyway, she gets up. Chris Taioni gets the doctor to come in to check on it. The doctor's saying to Chris, like, that's a deep cut. The blood's getting in her eyes. It's deep. So he was giving Chris Taioni the go-ahead to kind of decide where he wants to go with it. Because I don't know if you guys know this, but doctors can't stop fights. It's up to the ref. So the ref brings the doctor in to get a kind of like a different perspective on the injury or whatever they're seeing in the octagon. And then the ref ultimately decides, and Chris Taioni thought he heard enough. He ended up stopping the fight because of how deep that cut was. Now, the commentary team, this is why MMA is so funny to me. Like, I don't know if it's like a funny thing, but I just want more consistency because they said that they think they could have continued. She wasn't in much danger, all this stuff, blah, blah, blah. Where was this when Corey Sandhagen split open Song Yadong? I didn't hear anybody complain about that stoppage. Song Yadong looked fine. Like, obviously, beyond the cut. We're not talking about the cut. He looked like he could have continued. Yeah, if we're going with the same idea. It was the same cut. Same, like, it was right above an eye. Same, it looked like the same, like, size. My finger, whole thing in there. Crazy. Anyway, the inconsistency always bothers me. But they seem to think that it was they could have kept it going. Bueno Silva thought she could have kept it going. But when it came to the Corey Sandhagen Song Yudong fight, nobody had an issue with that fight being stopped. That was a big cut. Song Yudong couldn't continue. Inconsistency. Hate it. I'm not upset about this stoppage because honestly, Macy was just going to target that cut. Bueno Silva was going to start getting lightheaded from losing all that blood because it did not look like that was going to shut anytime soon. Regardless, another underdog pulled through for us. Macy Chiasson got the win. Let's move on to the featured fight of the night. Anthony Smith going up against Roman Dolidze, and here's another boring fight. Roman Dolidze ends up getting the win, and rightfully so. He actually came to fight. Anthony Smith didn't do anything. He didn't do anything in this fight. Oh, he took it on short notice. So did Roman. So did Roman. Up a weight class. But he had to fly in from Georgia. At least Anthony Smith was getting ready for a previous opponent. Roman was completely new. Yes, Anthony Smith took this on short notice to fight Ulberg, I think, originally. Regardless, Roman Dolidze actually came to fight. He actually threw stuff. Anthony Smith didn't do anything. That's it. That's all it was. Roman Dolidze gets a good win. It was a sloppy fight. Yes, he beat a ranked opponent. But like I said in my breakdown video, I didn't trust either of these guys to get it done. And it showed. They were both super sloppy. But I went with the guy that I thought would just, I guess in my breakdown I said, I don't trust either of these guys, but I will side with Roman Dolidze. And it ended up paying off for us. So this fight is super boring. Another super boring fight. But, yeah, we had a lot of those tonight. But it gets exciting in the co-main event. And, yes, you will see Brian Ortega here. Did Diego Lopes fight Brian Ortega? No, he didn't. You know who he fought? Dan Ige. Yeah. And if you guys didn't watch the fights and you don't know anything that happened, and this is the first that you're seeing of the fights, Dan Ige took this fight on like 3 hours' notice. What an absolute G. I hope both Dan Ige and Diego Lopes got paid handsomely after this fight because both of them are absolute warriors. Both of them have that champion mentality. They're both dogs. They both come to fight and they love to do it, and they both saved a rather boring card with a decently exciting co-main event. Now, Brian Ortega apparently has like a 103-degree fever and backed out of the fight hours before. We didn't hear about it until like 2 fights before. I think it was before the Anthony Smith and Dolidze fight, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong. Maybe it was a little bit earlier. But Brian Ortega, fever. They call up Dan Ige. Actually, Dan Ige messaged the UFC brass and said, don't take this opportunity away from me. Give me this fight. What an absolute stud. This guy comes in on hours' notice. Diego Lopes, another absolute beauty. He makes weight for featherweight. Okay, he's ready to go the night before. He goes to bed, wakes up like 3 in the morning, and they tell him this is going to be a lightweight fight. He's like, okay, starts rehydrating, makes weight for a lightweight. Makes weight 155. I think it was like 154 and a half maybe. Makes the weight. Next thing he knows, Brian Ortega, hours before their fight, has a fever. Diego Lopes is like, what the hell? But they're like, don't worry, Ige's stepping in. But they're like, the problem is Dan Ige is like 160-ish. So we're making a catchweight 165. Diego Lopes is like, no problem. I'll do that too. Beauties, both of them. Love both those guys. Dan Ige, Diego Lopes, the stars of the show tonight. Both are true warriors. And the way this fight went was, first 2 rounds, you give it to Diego Lopes. Both of the guys exchanged on the feet. Lopes is a little nuts on the feet, man. The guy's crazy. Throws with ill intent, throws combos. He doesn't care what comes back towards him. And Dan Ige, despite being the fighter that was on 3 hours' notice, looked like the fresher guy after 10 minutes. Yes, Diego Lopes is lucky he won those first 2 rounds, clearly, because Dan Ige came and was kicking the shit out of Lopes on the ground in that 3rd round. Dan Ige was also landing the bigger shots on the feet in that 3rd round. But those first 2 rounds, Diego Lopes was landing more. He was landing the more impactful strikes, and he was mixing in the grappling, got himself into dominant positions on the ground as well. And you can't give those first 2 rounds to Dan, but you can give the 3rd round to Ige. Both of these guys showed their heart. Both these guys showed their true warriors. Awesome. I'm excited to see both these guys. Both of them called for a fight at the Sphere. Give it to them. They deserve anything they asked for after doing what they just did to fill the co-main event spot. Absolute beauties. And here we are at the main event of the evening. Alex Poatan Pereira knocks out Jiri Prochazka yet again in that second round. This time in 13 seconds in that second round. A lot of people were picking Prochazka. He's going to game plan different. That's all I heard all week. He's going to wrestle. Pereira's wrestling hasn't been tested. All I said in my breakdown was, I don't see this going any different. And there's no signs to show me that it is going to happen different. I talked about the Alexander Rakic fight. Prochazka had zero striking defense. Wasn't checking leg kicks. Was getting hit in the face. He was getting beat up in that first round. Yes, second round finish against Rakic. Good for him. But like I said, you can't fight like that against Pereira. And it's actually funny because he wasn't fighting like that against Pereira. Prochazka came in with a more methodical, technical, more patient striking style this time. But it didn't matter. He was coming in. Yes, he wasn't going as crazy, throwing his wild shit, weird angles, all this crazy stuff. He landed a few good shots on Pereira in that first. I'll give him that. He did land a few, just like he did in the first fight. But Pereira ate them, and he fired back with his own counters. The guy looks menacing. But Pereira, same thing. Chewing up that leg. Making Prochazka switch stances. Chewing up those legs. And then landing his power bombs. The first left hook that Pereira landed, Prochazka ate it. And I was like, uh-oh. Uh-oh. I was like, if Prochazka eats these left hooks, I don't know what's in store for Pereira over these past 5 rounds. But the second clean left that landed was at the end of that first. And it put Prochazka on his ass. And it seemed like Prochazka didn't even hear the bell. This guy gets knocked down. He's like out in the air, wakes up by the time he hits the ground, and he's like looking at the ref like, why are you stopping Pereira from coming down onto the ground? He's like, come here. But he didn't know that the round ended. He had no idea. Anyway, goes back into that first. Still discombobulated. Still unleveled, whatever you want to say, equilibrium. Comes in. Pereira stalking him. 13 seconds in, lands a beautiful head kick, and it just puts Prochazka out. Knocks him out. Pereira followed up on it because Herb Dean didn't want to just stop the fight. It was for the belt. He wasn't gonna just let it go so easy. Pereira followed up, and Prochazka looked like an absolute mess getting up off the ground. He needed to be held up. It looked like he wasn't there. It was just absolutely brutal. I didn't expect anything to be different in this fight. Poatan comes in, knocks out Prochazka for the second time to defend his light heavyweight belt for the second time. And he says he wants to move up to heavyweight. Let him do whatever he wants. The guy is an absolute G. Best thing to happen to the UFC in the past few years. Now, the reason why I'm saying that he can move up to heavyweight if he wants is because there's no clear contender in the light heavyweight division at this point. Yes, people are going to say, Ankalaev. Boys, Ankalaev had a shitty performance against a 39 to 40-year-old Blachowicz in that draw that was for the vacant belt, I believe. Okay? Then he comes in, no contest against Johnny Walker. That should have been a DQ loss for Ankalaev because he needed him while he was a grounded opponent. Anyway, no contest instead of a loss. Rematch against Johnny Walker, knocks him out. Boys, Volkan Oezdemir just knocked him out, and everybody doesn't give him the credit because, it's Johnny Walker. He gets knocked out by everybody, even though half of you were picking Johnny Walker against Oezdemir. Regardless, I think Ankalaev has one more fight in him before he fights for the belt. If Pereira wants to fight at heavyweight, in the meantime, why not? Why not? The guy broke his toe off of Jiri Prochazka's head, though. Looked like, I think he popped it out, and he popped it back in at the end of that fight. But, yeah. The last 2 fights saved the boring card that we had. Regardless, we go 10. Oh, and actually, I didn't even mention it. Let's go back. The reason why I only went 10-2 and not 11-2 is because we picked Diego Lopes to defeat Brian Ortega. But because he fought Dan Ige, and even though Diego Lopes still won, which was our original pick, my pick was not based off of Dan Ige being his opponent. So I'm not going to count that in the win column for us, even though Diego Lopes still won. So instead of 11-2, we went 10-2 on picks. A great record, in my opinion. I think it was a fantastic night in terms of picks. It could have been better in terms of how the fights ended up playing out. We had a lot of boring fights throughout this UFC 303 card, but that's okay. Nevertheless, it's always an exciting weekend when we have UFC fights. Unfortunately, next weekend we have a break, so you won't be seeing me for another breakdown video, but I will break down the next card when the time comes. If there's some news that pops up in the UFC world in the meantime that I deem is good enough to make a video for, I will make. Maybe I'll make a future matchups video, either for tomorrow or Monday. So make sure to watch for that. But regardless, thank you once again for watching another UFC recap video, this time for UFC 303, Pereira versus Prochazka 2. Make sure you guys hit that like button, drop a subscribe if you are new, and drop a comment down below with your thoughts. I will see you guys in the next video.